Why Florida State's culture is leaving many teams behind.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Without culture, you don't have anything. And Florida State football definitely has it. Hi, my name is Brian Smith, and welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. And thank you to the everydayers that make this a great show. I truly appreciate it. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. Hit that notification bell and comment on YouTube. Love to have the conversations. Today's show, if you take nothing else away from it, is this. Florida State's culture, which I've talked about a lot, is tremendous. But who are they passing? This show is going to be about who they're passing and the teams that are actually also going down. I was surprised when I dug into this a little more, did a little bit of research, talked to some people, and a lot of it's just straightforward. Which teams are doing everything they can to get talent no matter how they get it, danger zone, and which teams are finding a way to do it right. It's a small number, and the Florida State Seminoles are one of those teams. So to do this, I kind of categorized it, and I looked at the teams. It's similar to something I did earlier this month. I talked about 6 different teams, Florida State being one, that were truly at the top of college football. This is a little broader, and it's also going to throw quite a few teams under the bus. I'm not going to hide it. Florida is number one on my list. Again, they just find ways to do it. But there are other teams, too, that probably are headed in that direction. So at the top of the board right now, Florida State, Georgia, I think Michigan they're now in the let's see category, or if you will, in limbo. That's what I labeled it. Notre Dame, Penn State, Iowa, Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, NC State, Illinois. Those programs, know who they are. They recruit to what they can recruit to at their level. Like Illinois is not on the same level as Georgia, obviously. But they're very well coached. They don't try to be somebody they're not. They recruit players that fit their program, and they don't try to worry about things with the NIL, et cetera, that they can't control. This is what we do. We're going to do it well, and we're going to do it consistently. That will get you more victories than going out and buying some defensive end who's got a street agent that's going to ask you for more money once you already get on campus with that kid. Hint, there's a few schools with some of those situations going on. You see kids transfer multiple times. Oftentimes there's an NIL problem, and it's not the school's fault every time. Sometimes it is. Gainesville had one of those not all that long ago. But at the same time, a lot of these kids, they're trying to manipulate. Norvell and his staff have put their foot down, to my knowledge, on this. And while they use NIL, it's used in a more proper sense. And that's why I think they're towards the top of college football, and they're leaving teams behind. Here's an example. Won't give the name, the player. I don't want to get sued. There's a couple of kids that have left his school recently where it was so bad because, from what I was told, their agent or whatever demanded money that the coach at this school went and personally cleaned out their lockers. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. That is a culture builder situation. But at the same time, you took those players in the first place. If you didn't see any red flags coming, that's also on the program as well. Now, asking for more money after a kid's on campus and enrolled is ridiculous. I'm not saying that it's not. They haven't played. They haven't done anything, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to do that. Come on, man. That's utterly ridiculous. Florida State, they had like Rodney Hill leave, et cetera. Guys that wanted money that wasn't realistic, goodbye. There's the door. We're going to win without you. Subtraction often leads to more victories. And what I mean by that, just getting rid of people that aren't realistic. Even if it's people around them influencing these young men, it's important. So again, like Michigan's a little iffy because they just won the title with culture. Their staff left, especially like the defensive staff, Harbaugh. I think they're in limbo, but Florida State, Georgia, Notre Dame, Penn State, Iowa, Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, North Carolina State, Illinois. Those are the programs that I feel comfortable with that are at the top of the board. Like, you know what you're going to get out of them. They just need a special player, a couple breaks here or there, and they could maximize for their level. This isn't just about teams that can win a title, because again, Illinois is not winning no national title. I get that. But those are programs that I trust. There could be a couple others you may argue in that. But at the same time, I think those coaching staffs have done a really, really good job. Kentucky was that way, but they've talked about NIL here recently. They give me some pause too. The teams that are maybe going to be there, this is the more interesting list to me, and I would like your comments on this, because I think for me, again, I need to see this season. When something goes wrong, you'll know if there's locker room problems, if there's a culture issue by how they handle it. Part of it could be NIL. Part of it could just be poor coaching, recruiting the wrong guys. It could be a lot of reasons. But culture still stands out, and it's usually blatant on the faces of players when something goes wrong. Do you rally the troops and circle the wagons, or do you fold like a tent? So Clemson, that used to be the best culture in college football. Ironically, they're the weirdest one out of all this group. They don't use the portal at all, and I think some guys are probably a little resentful over it, because you can still go get one or two guys that would change a spot if you have an injury, etc. They've done a little bit, but they haven't embraced it as much as they should. And while players like not being over-recruited by an experienced guy, they're just not the same program. So I don't necessarily think they're at the top of the culture list anymore. It's just my opinion, because coaching and roster additions, you got to use the portal at least a little bit. So I think that's a poor culture decision. You can get away with it if you take 5 extra guys a year that fix your roster, and Clemson hasn't. Miami's taken a lot of guys, but some of them are really, really good. Damian Martinez, Cam Ward, etc. I'm just not sure if they have culture in general and how much they're going to play together in big moments. They didn't finish strong last year, so I'm not sure. This is a big year for Miami's football program, because they've got to figure that out. And if they don't, then it may not have anything to do with the portal at all. Maybe just that staff hasn't figured out how to master it together. We'll see. Ole Miss is a school I'm a little more down on than some other people. Talent's ridiculous. Not saying it's not, but they took a few kids I'm not sure about, and I'm not so certain it's going to work out in terms of, like, they're recruiting so nationally. State of Mississippi, they like to take care of their own. I'm not sure how much that's going to work out for them long term. Short term, it might, but I'm looking at this from a broader perspective than just the 2024 college football season. Lane Kiffin's group's good, but I'm not sold. LSU, they've recruited pretty well at home, but they've lost some key players. They had guys leave to the draft. They've had a bunch of transfers this spring and in the offseason. I don't know what it is. LSU should be one of the easiest programs from a culture standpoint, and Brian Kelly knows how to run a program in general, but there's something kind of awry there. I don't know what it is, especially in their secondary. It's horrific. So there's something goofy. Southern Cal's taken too many transfer guys. They did. I would have put them lower down this list considering their talent, but they did hire the defense coordinator from UCLA, who's a really good football coach. And I think that Southern Cal, unlike Florida State, who's been building slowly, they might actually take a pretty good sized jump, because their defense was just garbage last year. That should help them. Tennessee, I just don't know. And what I mean by that is they can score. They've got some pretty good defensive talent. They got one of the best defensive linemen in the country, etc. But now they've got a quarterback that's in his second year that's got big-time talent. We'll know if they've got a true culture in Knoxville this year when they play some really good teams, because they got enough pieces in play to win 9 or more games. But now they got to do it with a new quarterback. Is it just because they had Hendon Hooker a couple of years ago? They were solid last year, but when they had Hendon, they were really good. Or is it going to be a situation where they can coach just about anybody? They can hit a pass. Ohio State, I'm down on them some. Depending on who you believe, they spent something like $30 million in NIL. If that's accurate, I'm way down on them, because I don't think that's going to work long term. You'll end up having finger pointing. Just my opinion. Michigan State, they've just not been able to recruit well, and they've tried the NIL approach. I don't think you can buy a roster and win titles. A lot of different coaches I've spoken with or seen a press conference have alluded to this. I believe that it's a pretty low-hanging fruit statement to say that Michigan State's in trouble. They got both their D tackles in the portal. They don't have a lot of roster situation. So Jonathan Smith is starting over. It's not his fault. It's just what he walked into. It's a disaster, probation possibly, etc. I don't know when that program's going to be back around to at least being good, but it probably isn't going to be anytime soon. And then Texas A&M. I think that's self-explanatory. Talking about trying to buy a roster. Jimbo Fisher tried to do that. It's ironic because he was Florida State's old coach and was the 2013 national champion head coach. But he took a turn for the worse and got greedy, and it kind of bit him. So you know what? That's what happens. If you take things lightly, it'll come back around and it'll get you. Sometimes that's just the way it is. And Florida State doesn't have that situation now, and they're better for it while Jimbo is unemployed. Coming up next, we're going to talk more about these teams and compare them to Florida State. And what are the little points that Florida State utilizes to help their program become a really dominant one? That's next on Locked On Seminoles. Have you downloaded the GameTime app? If you want to go to concerts, if you want to go to a play, if you want to go to the movies, a sporting event like MLB, or if you want to go see a Florida State game like Florida State versus Florida next year, the GameTime app is something I highly recommend. There's several reasons for it, but I'm just going to use the ones that kind of fit with me. I'm not the most patient guy. You can get it right from your phone, and in a couple of clicks, you can find out, let's say Florida State, Florida, where your tickets could be. You can click on different seats and see the venue from those seats. You also get pricing up front. Instead of it's $100 and then at the end it's $160 because there's taxes and fees. It's an all-inclusive price from the moment you look at the pricing. That's something I like. It drives me nuts to see all these random prices that go around. Also, they have different deals like flash deals, saving you even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of your game or event. And you also have the opportunity with the ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code Locked On College for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Also, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is the place to bet on each and every game. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks. All in the app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Which teams do you think are at least on the cusp of having a really good culture? It's the hardest question for me to answer. If you have an idea, if you want to comment on it, please do. And again, thank you to the everydayers and everybody that show up here to make this a great show. I truly appreciate it. Hit that like button and that notification bell for me and share this podcast. So these are the ones that I think I would label like they could take a step forward. They could make a big statement with the first-year head coach. There's a variety of things, but I have this as an area I call this year tells the tale. For instance, Sherrone Moore taking over at Michigan. They just won the title, but they lost most of their staff, first-round draft picks, etc. How do you know? There's no way to tell. They'll have to set some kind of precedent this year, and then in year two, it'll be kind of straightforward because they've got a lot of foundational pieces there, and they still have good people around to help it transform really quickly. And I don't think Moore is going to do a lot of things different than what Harbaugh did. He's an O-line guy, so I think they'll be okay, but you still got to prove it. Oregon couldn't beat Washington either time they played them last year, but they did buy in, and they had a good offense, a good defense. They were consistent. I just wonder about if that's a one-year kind of deal. I mean, Bo Nix had a great year. There's no way around it. They still brought in another quarterback, and they brought in some other key transfers, but they also used the portal in different ways, and some other teams, they spent some money. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't know if that will bother their locker room, and I don't know if that matters to them. I honestly just don't know. I'm not that close to that program. I live in the South. I don't live out West, but they got talent. If their culture at Oregon works out this year, there's a way they could win the national title. It wouldn't shock me because they do have experience at numerous spots. They got depth on the D-line, etc. Let's see if they buy in and what kind of run they make because they've got some big games, Ohio State, etc. We'll know where they're at. Miami, I've already talked about that this year, kind of tells the tale. Just want to mention them again. Louisville, I think they did the right steps, as I was talking about earlier. Hey, man, if somebody calls up and says, hey, we want more money after they get there, tell them to hit the road, Jack. That's ridiculous. I threw this one in because it's just like you think eventually they're at least going to be good. They don't have to be great. But compared to where they were when I was a kid, this is crazy. Nebraska, They've had a losing season, I believe, 6 years in a row. It's ridiculous. It's Nebraska. I don't get it. You could at least be a 7-5 kind of team there. You don't have to win 11 games or something. But when will Nebraska's culture catch up? Because I think Rule's a pretty good coach. Matt Rule does a nice job, but they still have to see the results on the field. This is similar in a lot of ways to what Norvell was going into in 2022. He needed to get it rolling, and they won 9 games. This is a really important year for Matt Rule and the Cornhuskers, because if not, then you're just like, okay, we're hiring good coaches. It's not working. What else can we do? And their answer may be nothing. Iowa, for the love of mankind, show me a credible passing game that is not just archaic. That's a culture problem at the head coach. I understand that he knows defense. I understand he knows coaching in terms of tackling, blocking, etc. But you have to openly and willingly accept the idea that you're going to come out and throw it around sometimes, or be able to adapt to it in the middle of a game and the players be prepared for it. To date, Iowa has not. To me, that is a culture problem, and that's a coaching staff issue. Wisconsin, they're in a situation similar to Iowa, but they went out and got a coordinator that knows how to throw it around. Does that program take that next step? I don't know, because I don't know if they get enough players to really do it. But defensively, et cetera, they got more speed. They're headed in the right direction. They're a team that doesn't use NIL, kind of like Iowa. They should be okay. The team that is in flux, much like Miami in the state of Florida, is UCF. They don't have big NIL like Miami does. They still got a lot of portal guys, but guys that didn't work out somewhere. I just wonder if UCF's taken too many guys that it's almost like last chance you because of an injury, because they didn't want to work hard enough, or whatever it is. Sometimes it doesn't work out and you need another chance. That's fine, or it's a grad transfer. But about half their roster is transfers. I just think at this point, I'm wondering if that's going to work, because they're just not recruiting quite enough. And I don't think they've got enough guys that are bought in to be at UCF to make that work. I used to think that it might come around, but they just haven't been able to get enough recruits that are top-end guys consistently. So we'll see. But too many guys to me that just didn't figure it out. And that's where we're at. South Carolina. This program just lost their quarterback. This is a program that saw key players transfer out. This is a program that just laid an egg in big games last year. Had a chance to beat Georgia, let it get away, etc. They need something good to happen here, because Beamer's on the hot seat. If not, the culture there could eat him up, and you could see a new coach there. Georgia Tech, opposite direction of South Carolina. They're kind of like Florida State. They're slowly building. They don't have the same talent the Noles do, but this is a program that quarterback situation is really good. They got some speed at receiver. Definitely need more bodies on defense. They're a year away, but they've improved. This year, to me, a successful season is finding a way to get to 8 wins. Ironically, they opened with Florida State overseas this year. Do not discount Georgia Tech. The other one is Virginia Tech, and it's probably a year behind where Georgia Tech is. They do have a quarterback. Drones is a good player. I just need to see the other pieces come along and them to be bought in. They've got a lot of 3-star guys that got something to prove. So let me see what you got. That's a big deal to me, because it's not always about 5-star talent that at least get you to the 8-4 plateau. Getting over 10 wins, usually 5-star talent's involved, as a rule. But Virginia Tech should still be able to go to bowl games consistently if they have good coaching. There's no reason they can't. So that's part of it. Lastly, we're going to talk about the Florida Gators, your favorite team to hate on, why they're the example of what doesn't work, and a few other teams that could end up there with them right here on Locked On Seminoles. Have you downloaded Monopoly Go, the game that is just like the one that you knew as a kid and the one now that you can get on your phone? It's easy to download. You can get it on the Google Play Store, the App Store. It's not very difficult to get. So you can do a lot of different things with it to play Monopoly, and it's not just like the board game itself. It is a lot of fun. You can team up with your friends in your time tournaments. You can work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's more to get as well. Unique stickers you can trade with friends and compete for albums or big prizes. New playing pieces to travel. Hilarious emojis you can use to taunt your friends, and so much more. Monopoly Go is free and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges, so check it out. There's always something fun to discover with Monopoly Go. Get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right. Florida State's culture, as I've said, is built really well. And I think there are a lot of teams, kind of like I was just bringing up a minute ago, that are kind of in flux or headed in the wrong direction, but have at least a chance. These are the 2 or 3 schools that I'm concerned about the most, and number one on the board, just right off the bat. Spoiler alert, is Florida. I've talked about it before, but I have not seen anything change in the last few weeks, and I really thought that it might with the portal. Maybe it's good they didn't take a ton of guys, but I don't see enough in recruiting, et cetera, that everybody's bought in, and I'm not hearing the right things about the boosters with their NIL packages. I know that's an in-between deal, but they don't want to spend money because they haven't been winning. It's kind of a catch-22. If you want to ruin your program, don't have good communication between boosters / NIL, the coaching staff, and then on top of that, don't bring in good recruiting classes that need to be there if you're going to take that next step. By the way, Florida has the number one schedule in college football this next year. They play Florida State, UCF, and Miami all this next season. I think that's going to be pretty difficult when you add in their SEC schedule. 11 games they play against power or in the FBS. That's pretty tough. I think it'll be hard for them to get over 6-6. It's possible. They got a pretty good quarterback, but I just don't think there's enough belief in Gainesville overall from the people around it, boosters, administration, to give Billy Napier what he needs to win. It's a shame in the sense that Florida should always be a program that wins 8 or more games because it's UF. It's not that hard, but if you want to screw it up, have 2 different ideas on what should be going on between boosters, administration, and the coaches. They're not on the same page. They're just not. And now you're probably going to see a collision course with a coach getting fired in season because of it. Just my take. The other 2 schools, this is kind of sad because in recent history, they've had some really good years. Michigan State, who I talked about earlier, I dug into that a little bit. They could fall into this category, and I talked about them a little bit earlier. I mean, in limbo, they could, if they don't get it going here with one of these portal guys and get a couple guys, especially in the trenches, they could be a 2 or 3 win team this year. That should never happen at Michigan State. But they lost both their defensive tackles to the portal. It gives me questions about their NIL. Is it really working or not? Maybe Jonathan Smith is cleaning house. I don't know. If he takes a step back, that's one thing, but you only get about a year of that. He's a good football coach, but be careful. There's a happy medium there. And then finally, Pitt. I forget the player's name, but you can look this up. If you want comedy, you want true comedy, this is it. A player entered the portal because he said he didn't think that Pitt could win big. I said it. Like, you can go look it up and find the exact quote. But when you make an open statement like that as you're walking out the door, maybe it's a parting shot because you didn't get along with somebody. And that's fine. I get it. And you know, it's distasteful to bring that level of scrutiny on a program that you just left. But it also brings up this. What's going on there or not that led this young man to make that statement? There's 2 sides to every story, and I get it. But Pittsburgh won the ACC recently. And now they're in a situation where they got a guy walking out saying, we don't think we can win, or I don't think we can win. Something has gone awry. If that doesn't say culture failure, I really don't know what would. So that's something that I want you to kind of ponder because it doesn't take very long. They won the ACC not that long ago. Now they're just falling off the map. So with that, before I forget, Locked On has launched the first ever national 24/7 streaming service on YouTube, and it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories all across the local Locked On network and nationally. And it's coverage for anything you can imagine: hockey, baseball, basketball, football. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app and on YouTube. Before I go today, one last thing to mention. We're into the offseason now, and that means recruiting. It is random. There will be players commit. Heck, there could have been somebody commit while I'm doing this podcast, and it will happen at any time. Kids are going to be taking visits. Kids are going to decommit, reschedule visits, commit, still take visits. There's going to be a lot of news. Before you see something and just believe it, make sure you check, because sometimes there's some bogus stuff out there. There's a lot of people that just post stuff that's ridiculous on social media, trying to act like there's somebody else. I've seen a few people, including myself, almost get completely burned on this recently. Don't be that person. follow the news, check the sources. I'll be happy to talk about the kids that commit when they come in with Florida State, but there's going to be a lot of stuff happening here in the very near future. Everybody have a great day, and I will see you soon.